Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the stories we've read and here in the past, and I've talked about some of them already, but I was going to answer some of the questions that I had posed to you guys about those stories, and then I'm going to go into a little bit of Rebecca and show you some of the scenes from the movie and compare them to what we read. And so there's going to be a little bit of mixture of both. But first, I'll start with the questions that I had posed to you guys about Star Wars and Hunger Games and Star Wars, Avengers, and Hunger Games, and then also Princess Bride was in there too because we covered that as a comedy. And so, any of these that you're able to find and watch, I would highly recommend that. I know some of you already reached out and said that you were trying to find them and watch them. Princess Bride comes on occasionally. Of course, Hunger Games, same, and Avengers, Star Wars, all those are kind of ones. I'm picking ones for the online that are a little more common that you can find from time to time. Rebecca is going to be one that would be a little bit harder. They have updated it. I've not seen the new one, so I would not compare it to that, but I will use the old one as an example. So first off, I asked you, what are two other things you'd like to know about the My Fair Lady, Star Wars, Hunger Games, Avengers, Princess Bride? So I'm going to go through some of your guys' questions and answer them. And so obviously you'll recognize your questions as they come up. Someone asked how they came up with the storyline for the Hunger Games. So Susan Collins, who wrote Hunger Games, it was around the time you had Twilight, you had a lot of teen novels coming out. Now I never got into Twilight, but I read Hunger Games as an older person, not a teen, and enjoyed them. Really couldn't put some of them down. I didn't like how how the last one ended, but still I had to give credit in the way of it kept me reading till the end. But she kind of explains that some of her inspiration was some old Greek mythology on one of the Greek stories that they had to sacrifice their own children as a punishment. So that always stuck with her. And then she also kind of had some, as far as stories, the gladiators. I mean, you can tell where there's that influence as far as studying Roman gladiators and how people would watch that for sport. Of course, the movie Gladiator kind of shows how they did that. And so she just kind of got some inspiration from those stories. But then if you have seen the Hunger Games, there is a reality TV aspect to it. That's kind of the scenes where they have Stanley Tucci is the actor and I don't know the other actor's name. I've seen him in a few things where they're like the host of the show and they, talk, and they're kind of the commentators of what's happening. And their kind of characters in the film is they don't even think about that they're watching kids fight to the death. They look at it as entertainment. And so she started to, when reality TV became a big thing, she started to kind of take that idea and mix it with the brutality of war and the brutality of like the Greek story and the Romans, and kind of mix the two. She said she was kind of seeing, and this kind of places it in the early 2000s, where she would watch reality TV and then flip the channel and watch the Iraqi war, and those were going on at the same time. American Idol, was around 2001-ish, 2002-ish, and those shows started popping up, those reality shows where people would compete, Survivor, and she just mixed the two. Like, what would it be like if we keep going with reality shows where they compete and people do crazy things, and then mix it with the brutality of war? So that story, it's got some different influences, but she explains that she came from that. Another question was, when was The Princess Bride written? 1973, and then it was made into a movie in about 15 years later, 1987. the story, the movie, I would say. So someone asked that too, is like which came first, the story or the movie? Story came first. Of course, I don't remember hearing much about the story in the book. Growing up, the movie had came out as a kid, and then it became a big hit, and that's my first introduction to it. But so a lot of people probably with that story have seen the movie before they read the book, but the book actually came first. Um, and someone asked about the title too, and I'll read that to you. Someone asked, "Do you think Star Wars could work as a musical?" Um, Boy, that'd be tough. They actually did make a Christmas, but Star Wars when it first came out was a huge hit, and those kind of things you can't necessarily predict. I don't think they had. Well, they had no idea it would be as big as it was, but even knowing it would be popular, people just had not seen that kind of special effects. Plus, if you think about Star Wars, is a human story, and it's got a lot of, and we've talked about that in some of our questions, but it uses a lot of character things that work, and so the story was always there. I think when it mixed with the special effects and became what it was, then it really took off. As far as that's why it was such a huge hit. People had not seen anything like that. Making it into a musical, when they first were a huge hit, and they were like everywhere. They did a Christmas special, and I want to say there was some music in it. It was on TV. It was not a movie that was released because they threw it together, I think, real quick. It's widely panned now. A lot of people make fun because it was just kind of cheesy and low budget, and but Star Wars buffs, people that really get into it, they probably try to find copies of that because it's nostalgia in that way. But yeah, I don't know necessarily. Now it's got music in it, and I would say one of the most popular, well-known soundtracks of movie history. John Williams, wrote. Of course, John Williams. He also wrote the music for Jaws and Superman and E.T. and Indiana Jones, and his music. I mean, probably half the good music you would hear in a movie, it's him. But he did the soundtrack for Star Wars. And in my music class, we do a lot of study of that soundtrack because he actually uses old classical music and kind of recreates it and makes it modern as far as for the film. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you could have some of those. There's some music in it. The scene, where they go in and hire Han Solo. They're in that cantina. There's music there. So yeah, maybe. I did see where, and I didn't know this. This is not off topic, but in the '90s there was a TV show that tried to have, because like cop dramas were really big at that time. NYPD Blue, Law and Order was just coming out and everything. They tried to make a serious cop drama with Broadway music and mix the two. I was just watching about that, and it bombed. It was not. It was really weird when you kind of watch what they did, but sometimes, yeah, making it into musicals probably not the best idea, but you never know. Then they were asked about, is the movie Princess Bride based on the book or a book on the movie? So I already discussed that book is first, then the movie. Let's see. Let's keep going here. Someone wanted to know what happens at the end of Princess Bride. Well, I don't want to necessarily spoil it if you've not seen it. It's, the comedy of that film. If you have seen it and have heard, you've probably heard it quoted. It's one of those movies that gets quoted all the time. I'm thinking of quotes right now like "inconceivable" and "as you wish," and but yeah, I wouldn't want to give it away. It's not a movie necessarily where you're deep into the plot of it, where you're like, okay, I gotta see what happens. Although it's gonna, the good guy's gonna win, kind of that thing, but it's more for the comedy ride of it. Seeing these characters do what they do in the film. But I would, yeah, if you get a chance. So I won't spoil that, which you're probably like, what? I want to know. Why did I choose The Hunger Game? As with the other stories, it was very different than other stories you picked. That's a good question. I laid out, so sci-fi would have been more Star Wars, and really Avengers would fall in that comic book sci-fi realm. Science fiction meaning a lot of its comic books are kind of science fiction. They have powers that aren't real. It's not based in reality. Although I will say comic books are starting to tell their stories more in real life. So like I've noticed that with these Marvel movies putting Avengers into real life conflicts, terrorism, wars between real countries, and they put them in the middle of that with these superpowers. Now that part's all made up, but they're putting them inside of real conflicts. But really, sci-fi is kind of completely out of reality. Dystopian is different, and I did put Hunger Games in that because there is still a fictional fantasy like aspect to it. So that's why I kind of lumped them all together there, because really, they're not based on like real life things. Dystopian, though, the difference, and it is different, is they try to think about, well, what would be the future if society fell apart? So that's why you'll have things that are technologically advanced, because it's supposed to be in the future. So it's kind of like we keep inventing things and keep inventing things. What would happen, 50 years in the future if we kept inventing things? So you got hovercrafts, you got special weapons and different things, and you could create a arena where people could fight to the death kind of thing. So they have that, but then yet society has fallen apart, and so we're back to like basic needs. People fight for food. It takes place supposedly in reality, but what would happen if reality turned out this way? So that's where it's different than science fiction, because science fiction doesn't really tie itself to those rules. It just says, well, we're going to make up people with superpowers, or you think X-Men, they're mutants, they got these special powers, or just serums and things that can make people superhuman. And so it doesn't do that, but yet it does kind of have that fantasy feel to it. So that's why I put them together. But Hunger Games is completely different than those other two because of that aspect. It's not science fiction. It's what we call dystopian. Dystopian stories would be like, I think Ender's Game is some. The Hunger Games, Divergent was a series that was that way. Divergent is supposed to take place in Chicago. Funny little tidbit about that is there's a scene where they crawl up a Ferris wheel, and it was when it was made, that Ferris wheel was in Chicago, and I've been there when they had that Ferris wheel, and I've been to Chicago, and in the movie they're kind of assuming that Ferris wheel is always going to be there. It's well known in Chicago. They kind of figure, well, even 50 years in the future, however long that's supposed to be in the future, that Ferris wheel is still going to be there. Well, not too long after the movie, that Ferris wheel was taken down. They actually sold it, and believe it or not, it's the Ferris wheel that's in Branson on the Strip now. That big Ferris wheel there, that is the one from Chicago. They moved it to Branson, and then Chicago built a bigger, newer one. So it's just kind of funny because I've been to it when it was in Chicago, and now I've been to it when it's in Branson, and it's the one that's in the movie that's all kind of falling apart, and they climb it and everything. So that was for free. Let's go on here. Some asked about My Fair Lady, just wanting to know. Someone asked about what language is she speaking, about being British. It is. All of them are British. That play takes place in Britain. Now hers, if you notice, he when he's calling out the dialects that they have, he names where they're kind of from in Britain. It'd be like if someone came to America and was like, "Well, you're from Texas, but you're from New York." I mean, they're going to sound really a lot different. They're both speaking English, our English, American English, but they sound completely different. Or someone would say, "You're from Wisconsin," you're going to have Wisconsin accent. That's what he does there. He tells them, "Well, you're from here." Hers is called Cockney. It's a very strong British accent. Some of the British is more polished and almost sounds American. Hers is not. Hers is very. I would try to do it. All I want is a room up there. It's very, very British. I'm kind of mixing it with my accent, but it's very deep and hard to understand. That's why reading it was even harder to understand. Let's keep going here. Someone asked about the purpose and the meaning behind the Hunger Games. I kind of got into that. Let's see. Princess Bride, they want to understand Princess Bride a little bit better. It is satire. It is, like I said, in the writings, the humor comes in the fact that it's so absurd, it's comical. And that gets to the next question. Someone wanted to know why there were only 5 kisses since 1642. Well, that's the comedy. There's, no one's counted how many great kisses there has been, because what criteria would you use? It's the comedy of that absurdity. There have been 5 great kisses, and then to pick the year 1642 like that is a special year. It's just comical the way he expresses things, and I think some of you guys saw that in other places with the way she would describe other girls, the way she would describe her love for Wesley. It was so absurd, in her description that it's comical. And the way they do that in the film is they use characters that are so over the top. Now, they don't act over the top where you're like, okay, this is annoying. They use characters that really fit the mold, but they are over the top in their characters. They're not people you would see in real life. And so it's kind of funny in that way. And then someone asked about the married couple in My Fair Lady. I think that's probably on my part a little misunderstanding. When I was talking about My Fair Lady, there was a scene where he has to sing, Rex Harrison has to sing about falling in love, that he's realizing he has fallen in love with Eliza. That couple's not really married. Rex Harrison and Audrey Hepburn, the actors, were not really married. The man who wrote that song in real life for the film, his wife was who he, in real life, his wife is the one that he looked at and was like, I've grown accustomed to your face. And so he wrote it, that inspiration came from his real life wife, who was an actress, but not in My Fair Lady. She was the wife in Absent Minded Professor, if you've ever seen that old film, Disney film, and then she was also in Pollyanna. She was the nurse. She was in some Disney films that I remember. She was in some other stuff too, but that was his real life wife, the man that wrote the song, not the man who acted in the film and sang it. So that's the married couple I was talking about from that song. And I think what made him come up with the title. So I'm going to read the real title of the book. It's called The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure, the good parts version. That's the whole name of the book. And he did that because he wrote the story kind of like the movie. The movie is the grandpa is reading the story to his grandson, and then they go into this fictional world as he's reading it. Well, in the book, he kind of does that. He is he uses this thing where he gives the book to his son, but his dad had read it to him all his life. And so he gives the book to his son, and his son only reads a chapter and puts it down, and then he picks it up and realizes that his dad, his dad had read it to him, had left out a lot of the boring parts, so that's why he calls it the good parts version. But that's all part of his way of telling. It's absurd. It's the comical presentation he does of this, and so that's the full name of it. So that's probably why they shortened it to The Princess Bride for the film. And then I think that's it. That's it for that. But I wanted to go through those. And then I've been asking you questions about Rebecca. And I'm gonna compare some things here. I was mainly asking you about, the mystery angle of it. What's mysterious so far in the reading. I like that reading because she does, the reader does some voices, kind of adds some mystique to it. And then Rebecca is all through it, but yet she's not alive and she's not there as a character, but she is all through the story. And part of that is the mystery. It's like, who was she? Why is she still, why is she still part of this story? And so once you find that out, that's the big reveal, kind of. And then I ask you about Mrs. Danvers and De Winters and Ben. And so that's what I want to show you here. Now, this is the character at the beginning, the woman that's kind of annoying. I wanted to show you a little bit of this is where I think Hitchcock did he was very good at casting. He was very good at pacing a scene of where it really told you who the character was. And so you pick up from this lady, this character. This is Joan Fontaine. She plays who becomes Mrs. De Winters when she marries Maxim. She became a huge star after this. She was in a couple of other Hitchcock films, or she was in at least one other, Suspicion. She was very good at playing someone that was nervous, kind of just overwhelmed with everything, yet had a quiet confidence about her. And she was very good at that, very good at that kind of role. She did that more than once. She was actually the sister of Olivia de Havilland, who was in Gone with the Wind, and they actually feuded for most of their life. It was around this time that Joan Fontaine was starting to get recognition, and that there was jealousy between both of them, and they lived, I think one lived into her 90s, the other one may have reached almost 100, so they didn't die that long ago, and up until they died, they feuded with each other, and it was kind of sad in that way, but she's the actress that plays what you would say the main character if Rebecca wasn't. And so I want to show, we've all met people like this. She's very conscious of like society, and she knows how to be, I don't want to say charming, but just knows how to be nice and overly nice. But when she wanted to flip that switch and be kind of mean and nasty, she does that. And so this scene shows that. I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. She does not know that Maxim and her have been dating. And so she's going to leave to go to her daughter's wedding. And she's panicking because she thinks, okay, they're going to leave. And I haven't told Maxim bye. And she loves him. And so she goes up there, and his character, you just never get he has a lot of mystery to him. Maybe not has to be scary mystery, but it's just like he has these mood swings, and he just asks her to marry him. And so when they decide to get married here, he calls up that lady, and she comes up, and you're going to see that switch. She's being nice, and then as soon as he walks out the door, she becomes pretty mean to Mrs. De Winters.
Thing that my daughter is engaged to be.
So watch this switch here.
I'm so glad you called me, Mr. De Winter. I was making a hasty departure. It was so rude of me not to let you know. but a cable came this morning announcing that my daughter is engaged to be married.
That's rather a coincidence, Mrs. Van Hopper. I asked you up here in order to tell you of my engagement.
You don't mean it. Well, how perfectly wonderful. How romantic. Who is the lucky lady?
I apologize for depriving you of your companion in this abrupt way. I do hope it won't inconvenience you too greatly.
When did all this happen?
Just now, Mrs. Van Hopper. Just a few minutes ago.
I simply can't believe it. And I suppose I ought to scold you for not having breathed a word of all of this to me. What am I thinking of? I shall give you both my congratulations.
She
and
still
my
wants to
blessing.
impress
I'm
him
very
because
happy
he's
for you
rich
both.
and
When and where is the wedding
society.
Here, as soon as possible.
Oh, whirlwind romance. Splendid. I could easily postpone my sailing for a week. This poor child has no mother, so I shall take responsibility for all the arrangements. Trousseau, reception, and everything, and I'll give it right away. But my luggage. Go down and tell the porter to take everything out of the car.
Just a minute. We're most grateful, Mrs. Van Hopper, but I think we both prefer to have it all as quiet as possible. And I couldn't possibly allow you to change your sailing plans.
Oh,
No. Dear, I'll go down and see that your luggage is brought back.
Thank you, Max.
And then the switch.
So this is what's been happening during my illness. Tennis lessons, my foot. I suppose I have to hand it to you for a fast worker. How did you manage it? Still water certainly run deep. Tell me, have you been doing anything you shouldn't?
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, well, never mind. I always did say that Englishmen have strange tastes. But you certainly have your work cut out as mistress of Manderley. To be perfectly frank with you, my dear, I can't see you doing it. You haven't the experience. You haven't the faintest idea. of what
She's
it
not
means
like
to be
that
a
when
lady.
she doesn't want to be, and so we've
Of course,
met
you
people
know
like
what
that.
you do, don't you? You haven't told yourself that he's in love with you. Fact is, that empty house got on his nerves
You know,
to such an extent. He nearly
You
went off his
see
head.
that character, and
Just
she
couldn't go
does
on.
a good job with
You
it
better leave, Mrs.
as
Van
an
Hopper.
actress.
You'll miss your train.
The other one I want to show you is Ben here. So Ben is the character I was asking about. This is something that, let's see, there it is, the cottage. You know, Hitchcock, and really all, when they do suspense and mystery, you have characters that you can't quite figure out. And Ben, from the reading, obviously you could tell, now they make him like he's been traumatized, something's happened, he's kind of a rambling old man. And so I wanted you to see how they portrayed him in the film, see if this is what you were thinking of. And then two, I'm going to point out the music, and I'm going to make sure how long this video is, but I have a little video, hopefully I can show you, of how music affects a scene and how that can, you can show the same stuff, but just the music will change the whole tone of that scene. So let's watch this part. See, the music's kind of happy. They're taking a stroll. You know, it's kind of, and this movie has that. It'll have happy, and then all of a sudden it'll switch to something kind of foreboding and scary or mysterious. And this does that. She, you know, happy music.
It's Jasper. There must be something wrong. Perhaps he's hurt himself.
No, he's all right. Leave him alone.
Don't you think I better go and see?
Don't bother about him, I tell you. He can't come to any harm. He'll find his own way back.
But already it's starting to change a little bit. Maxim's character, you just never know what he's doing.
Jasper! Jasper! Oh, there you are.
And the music starts to switch from being this happy to more mysterious.
Jasper! Jasper!
And then the creaking door sound, that's always scary.
Oh. I didn't know that there was anybody.
I know that dog. He comes from the house. Ain't yours.
No, he's Mr. De Winter's dog. Have you anything I could tie him with?
Now, you could show this cottage with different music and it not be mysterious and creepy. But with that music, something is strange about this place.
doing nothing. I was just putting my shells away. She's gone in the sea, ain't she? She'll never come back no more.
No, she'll never come back. Come on, Jasper.
You know, you can tell the mysterious nature. He doesn't give away anything. You just know something's wrong. So characters are used like that. The last one I want to show you is the Mrs. Danvers. This is where she finds out that Mrs. De Winter has broke the Cupid doll. And it's funny because Maxim, he's used to living in privilege. He's used to living where he just gets his way. And so he doesn't think it's a big deal. She's scared. Mrs. De Winters is like, okay, I'm new. I broke this. I'm silly. You know, why did I do this? So she tried to hide it. And he's just kind of dismissive of Miss Danvers. Like, why are you scared of her? Just tell her you did it. But you're going to see the manipulation of Miss Danvers. She knows she can't control him. But she knows I think there's a moment you kind of see she knows she has Mrs. De Winter scared. And that she can kind of control and manipulate her. And she does it just with eye movement and just the way she looks at her. And so you'll see that here. So they're watching old films of their honeymoon. And she tells him, well, he comes in and tells them, you know, that they think someone stolen the Cupid doll. They can't find it. And so she tells him, well, I broke it. And he's like, it's silly, you know, you just need to tell her.
You were afraid of them. It's all a mistake, Mrs. Danvers. Apparently Mrs. De Winter broke the Cupid herself and forgot to say anything about it.
I'm so sorry. I never thought that I'd get Robert into trouble.
Is it possible to repair the ornament, madam?
No, I'm afraid it isn't. It was smashed into pieces.
What did you do with the pieces?
See, he's kind of laughing. It's not a big deal.
Well, I put them at the back of one of the drawers in the writing desk.
It looks as though Mrs. De Winter were afraid you were going to put her in prison, doesn't it, Mrs. Danvers? Well, never mind. Do what you can to find the pieces, see if they can be mended, and above all, tell Robert to dry his tears.
I should
Now,
apologize
he's
to Robert
scared of
Frost.
Mrs. Danvers, too. He sneaks out of there.
Mrs. De Winter will tell me personally.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Mrs. Danvers.
And so she knows she can't control him, but she's latching on to that control there. And you can see with just the looks, an eyebrow raised, and, you know, she didn't say, oh, it's not a big deal. She said, well, can it be fixed? You know, you see where her character is very manipulative and controlling. And so that's part of the story as well. You finish this. I want to compare some of this. I'll probably ask you a couple questions, and then we'll move into our next story. I am going to do a couple, well, at least one holiday theme, because we are coming into the holidays here. So I will add that in there as part of our story. So thanks, guys.